So in the previous videos, I didn't talk much about the Canadian university application. So in this video, I'm going to make a comparison of the university application systems between the two countries. And we'll talk about differences from 4 aspects: the application timeline, the application systems, application requirements, and supplementary documents. So generally speaking, application to US colleges starts earlier than application to the Canadian ones. And for the early decision and early application round, the deadline is as early as November, while application to Canadian ones will not start until the early October. The early decision round 2 and the regular decision deadlines for most of the US colleges will range from the start of January to February, while the deadline for the Canadian ones will be until to the mid of February and even to April. And one thing you may have noticed is that there's no early decision for Canadian universities except UBC and University of Toronto, which have the early application round. Other universities basically do admission on the rolling basis. In terms of the application requirements, there are huge differences. Generally speaking, applying to Canadian universities is less complicated than to the US colleges, as the application to Canadian universities require less materials to be submitted. First of all, there is no common application essay for Canadian universities. As I said, universities in Canada use their own application portals, and unlike the US colleges, most of which will also require a supplementary application, only a few Canadian universities will require applicants to submit supplementary applications. And we'll talk more about this in the later slides, where I'll show you a table with universities that require supplementary applications. And basically, SAT is not required for the students studying in Canada. And even if you're an international student studying in other countries, SAT is not required in many cases. And in terms of the grades, US colleges will look at all your high school grades, while the Canadian university will only look at your grade 11 to grade 12 scores. Some of the university will only look at 5 to 6 academic courses in grade 12. And unlike US colleges that require recommendation letters, Canadian universities will only require applicants to provide references. That means that you will only need to fill in the contact information of your reference and don't need to upload their recommendation letters. US college application will allow applicants to fill in up to 10 activities, while most of the Canadian universities will only need up to 5 to 6, and some of the university will only need you to upload your reference and transcript without providing any other materials. And in terms of the application system, as I said, each Canadian university uses their own application portals. So here, I'll show you some. So, as you can see, the first one is what we call the OUAC. This is the application system for most of the university in Eastern Canada. But it is not as functional as a common application essay or coalition application system, as we can only register your information and browse the programs in this application. And after you submit, you will get emails from the universities you have applied to with your account name and password so that you can use those information to log into the application portals in different universities. For example, what you're looking at right now is the application portal of the University of Toronto. So basically, after you register your information and applied to the University of Toronto through the OUAC system, in a week or so, you will get the account name as well as the password, which you can use to log into the student portal of the University of Toronto. But, as I said, not all of the university will use OUAC, and all of the universities in Canada have their own application portal. So the OUAC can only be used to apply to the universities in Eastern Canada. If you want to apply universities in Vancouver, then you have to go to the application portal of the different universities. For example, as you can see here, this is the application portal of the University of British Columbia, located in Vancouver, Canada. And in order to apply to this university, so you have to go to this page and click the Apply to UBC. Then you have to create your own account and then log into the system to submit all the required documents. So this is the difference between the application systems in USA and Canada. So basically, to apply to university in the USA, you can either use Common Application System, Coalition System, or the University of California Application System. But if you want to apply to Canadian universities, you have to use OUAC if the university applied to are located in the Eastern Canada, and you have to use their own portals even after you register your OUAC. And for some other universities like University of Victoria or University of Alberta, etc., they have their own portals, so have to go to their website and register the account on their application page. Regarding the supplementary essays, as I said, only a few universities in Canada will require applicants to submit supplementary essays and interviews. And I have listed all of the Canadian universities that require applicants to submit supplementary applications, including essays, activity sheets, or interviews. So generally speaking, it is relatively less competitive applying to Canadian universities than applying to the top 30s in the US. So since many students of mine are studying in Canada every year, I would also recommend them to pick up 1 to 2 universities in Canada as their backups, even they're applying to many US colleges. So as you can see in the table, if you want to apply the engineering and commerce programs in the University of Toronto, then you are required to submit a supplementary application, which include an interview as well as some essays. And if you want to apply to University of Waterloo, doing an interview will only be needed if you want to apply engineering programs and some of the financial accounting programs. But all of the applicants are required to submit some short supplementary essays. And doing an interview will only be required if you want to apply to the University of British Columbia. But all of the applicants will be required to submit some essay questions. And regarding application to the Queen's University, all of the applicants are required to submit essays and no interviews are required. And if you want to apply to McMaster University engineering programs, you have to do an interview, which has some interview questions as well as essay questions. And the program you're applying to is the business programs in this university, then you have to submit some essay questions. So basically, applicants are not required to submit anything as their supplementary applications to the Simon Fraser University, which is located in the Vancouver, unless the programs you're applying to is the commerce program. Then you have to fill in some activity sheet and write some essays. And for the applicants of the University of Victoria, unless the programs you're applying to is commerce or education, other applicants are not required to submit any supplementary essays. Last, almost all of the applicants do not need to submit any supplementary applications to the Western University, except if you are applying to the Abbey Business School, which is one of the top-ranking business programs all over the world. If that is the case, you have to write some essays and filling up the activity sheets. Okay, so this is pretty much about this video. If you have any more questions, do leave me a message, or you can also check out the official websites of the universities. And I'll see you in the next video.